till this day, Britain in any manner has never apologized for any of its history. And the reason for that is because they know there is a case for reparations as soon as that happens. And there was an MP that was interviewed with Afua Hirsch who made an admittance to that. So even MPs recognise that there's a case there, but don't want to apologise, so that case doesn't get brought forward. So I want to talk a little bit about the history of India. And when I talk about India, I'm talking about pre-partition India. So that is inclusive of Pakistan and Bangladesh. And so when we look at the history of India, Britain came over to India and excuse me, I'm looking at some notes, but Britain came over to India and was the first external country to buy land on India as part of the East Indian Company. And we progressively colonized India via this company over 300 years. I say we, I mean Britain. And so it's important to also note that Queen Victoria had a hand in this, the royal family had a hand in this. And so she signed the papers to say, yeah, you can purchase that land and allowed this to happen. And this later on went on to the British Raj, and England just continued to kind of colonize. And during the partition, there was 15 million people displaced. And then on top of that, we had 1 to 2 million people died, and this was during the train massacre. There was mass murder via trains during traveling, and Britain knew about that. They washed their hands though. They were just like, well, we've done what we wanted to do, wanted to leave, and they emphasize on the religious divides that were there, so to do with Muslims and Hindus. And so that's the reason why today there's a huge amount of Pakistanis that are Muslim and a huge amount of Indians that are here Hindus, because of the religious divides that as England forced on India. But also to this day, there's a war at Kashmir. There's a consistent war that's been happening, and there's no one else to blame but in England and Britain. And so how do you kind of compensate for those deaths, right? When there's up until this day, modern day 2021, we're still people are still dying at the border. And I think the other thing as well to notice that politicians, so people, so Churchill is revered as this man that can never be spoken ill of, and we saw that when there was the heights of the Black Lives Matter movement and statues were being taken down, and it was brought into question about Churchill and his history. And whilst I admit Churchill, in terms of World War, he got us out of that. We can't look at it in one lens and just say, well, he was a great hero and we should be thankful. Well, actually, out of the 5 famines that pre-partition India had, there was only one. Scientists said there was only one that was a direct impact of England alone. The other famines were because of soil and weather and all that kind of stuff happened. This one specifically was because of England. And so 3 to 4 million Bengalis died in 1943. And we talk about this like it was ages ago. 1943 was not that long ago. That was World War II. And the reason for that is because they used their resources to feed Britain instead. And historians actually say that there would have been enough. They would have been able to feed India too. And so there was actually no need for this. The way that this happened, it was unreal. And yeah, like you mentioned earlier, it was 45 trillion that was measured, that was taken from India. The other bit as well is that people often say, well, we gave India the trains, right? We gave them the trains, and so they should be thankful. Well, no, you didn't. India could make trains themselves. You forced them to make the trains, made them pay for them an extortionate amounts, and then use those trains to steal from them. So it was it was awful what England did, and it's not funny, but I just think the whole concept that people think that trains were a gift to India is awful. But on top of that, England, and I think to this day, I think the biggest symbol of what is needed to India is the Kohinoor diamond in the crown, and that's worth 140 to 400 million. And the amount of it's been ages been asked that needs to be sent back. and it hasn't. I mean, the gold as well. So India's been quite well known for its Indian gold. There was a lot taken. So in summary, I believe that India deserves reparations because of the level of things that Britain did. However, I recognise that, yeah, how do you put a number on death? But I think even asking that question while saying, well, we shouldn't really give reparations because you can't put a number on death, is like, okay, so my family member's just died. If someone killed my family member, but I didn't find out about it at the time, we find out years later, and I'm in my 70s, 80s, and we find out this person was murdered. Does it then mean that actually they it was ages ago, we don't need to prosecute the murder because we found out way later, it doesn't really matter anymore? No, my family still deserves compensation for that. And so, yes, I recognize that 45 trillion is a lot of money, but we're still getting money from countries that we colonized and then got them to loan off us. And that's seen as okay. I just think that we need to do more. We need to give money, we need to give opportunities, and that just through to modern day people living here as well, Indians. And you can see that from Pakistanis and Bangladeshis living in the UK have some of the worst economic um, backgrounds and stuff here, living here because of that. Um, but also there's that displacement. Like, I don't know a lot about my history from living here, right? Um, and I feel like the education is somewhat propaganda in the way that we only teach it from one side. So I think it's through education, um, through opportunities, and through finances is where we need to give money back. I think I've just gone over time, so